This is a risk for anybody involved. It's a risk for me. Hello.
Hello. Again. Hi.
We're back.
We are back. And this time, these are just for show.
Yeah, they're not turned on.
They're not on at all.
See?
You can't hear me any different.
Mics are on the hat this time around.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing a little walk around.
Well, walkabout. Do you know that Chili Pepper song, Walkabout?
I'm sure I do.
I think I'll go on a walkabout. It's off their Hot Minute album. That was a good album. I haven't
listened to that in a hot minute.
Ooh, nice.
There's a lot going on around here, and the place is an absolute mess. And we thought we'd give you a tour and tell you what the heck's going on.
So, welcome back to Phantom Power Hour. I'm Josh.
And I'm Jeremy.
So let's walk.
Let's do it. So the OGs among you will already notice my little closet back behind the light wall is gone, boxed off. I mean, the rest of the studio is kind of thrown together right now.
I know this is not the main point, but why don't you show them the little drum corner? I like it. I like the new drum setup.
I'm not sure what to think here. It's definitely self-conscious because I used to have everything wide open. Now I've got bookcases surrounding it. I just don't know what to think.
And you've got some cute wooden magnets over there.
It's for my wedding, actually.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The lounge has been relocated.
Yes.
To this location in the office, which, again, there's construction stuff all over the place, but here we find ourselves at the new lounge, which is fully functional and works great. Not the hot water,
but the cold water.
I only wired one side, so suck it. I don't care. But like, we got our storage, we got coffee, we got a microwave, we have a fridge, everything we need.
Yeah.
But why? Why is it here? Why isn't it in the old lounge? Let me show you. So this might be a little prelude. 11 Alpha 65 Evos from Focal. You probably already know where this is going.
What kind of space could require 11 speakers?
Well, there will be 12, but
this is true.
To show the old space, which is currently staying the same. So, normal control room for those who have seen it before. The rack of gear. All of this is staying the same, which, by the way, there's going to be a video coming out on this thing.
Well, I haven't seen this yet.
This is nuts. The West Audio NG Tube EQ. You control everything with a plugin. It's automated my entire tube bus. It's incredible.
That's awesome.
And I just filmed one for this today.
Yeah.
But so all this is staying the same. So what's new? So the lounge, if we walk back here on the back side of this building, you'll see it's like, okay, well, the HVAC has already been cut off and this has been patched. The whole room back here has been cut off and sealed. And we are still like knee deep in construction. So the old hallway, the wires are still hanging. So like, be careful. Don't fall. And then we're now in what will be the new space. So it's currently a wreck, but what you're seeing, if you look at the lines on the floor, so this was the separating factor. So this was like a large bathroom. It did encapsulate like my little storage closet for the studio, as well as a full bathroom and then a lounge. All that has been taken out. We fixed the shell and the walls are back up in place. The electrical's been reran. And this was going to be a new mixing suite for both left and right and Atmos. So electricals on the ceiling, multi-zone electrical to make sure everything's as clean as possible. We've got a line for an HVAC split. So this isn't even going to be on the same HVAC as the rest of the building. Yeah. So right now, the main drywall is off of this wall, but other than that, it's like a general structure like any other building.
General structure.
General structure. So,
But Jeremy, if you have 12 speakers, how are you going to turn them all on and off?
the way I'm getting around it is I've kind of wired up those circuits to 2 different zones in here, so I can turn everything on and off with a switch. But there will still be like power conditioners up with these things, so it'll all be on a good circuit, but I can turn everything off very easily here. I don't know how other people do it. That's how I'm going to do it, because I don't want to run super long IECs and extension cables. This just seemed like an easy way to do it to me. So other than that, the room itself is going to be very simple. And I know the main pushback with Atmos is like, this is dumb expensive. But for me, this is relatively expensive because I'm doing a fair bit of demo and then renovation, starting from ground zero. Like, none of my stuff in my other room is going to translate over here. This is going to be basically starting from ground zero. So still, the budget for the room is less than my monitoring section in the main room, which is kind of wild to me.
That's crazy.
Doing construction and the equipment for less than just the monitoring section.
What's kind of the rough size of this room?
So basically 11 and a half, which is on the razor's edge, depending on your speaker choice of if you hit Dolby spec or not, by 23 by 10. So I have Haverstick Designs helping me out. Gavin Haverstick, relatively local to here. Great individual. If you have any questions as far as acoustics go,
He's got his own channel, right?
yeah,
His
they
own
have his own channel, Haverstick Design. We can link it down below. Helping me out with things about the room design that I wouldn't even know to ask, let alone know how to take care of. He's helping me with partition design, which is a fancy acoustician's way of saying a wall. So I know how to build a wall. I don't really know how to do it for like the best possible sound isolation. I did everything in the studio myself before, but as far as knowing if I was doing that correctly, it was a gray area, and it was a good way for me to experiment while doing everything DIY. And 13 years ago, building materials were pretty cheap, so I could make mistakes.
When you say the size is on the razor's edge, or at least the width, is that in regards to the diaphragm size of the speaker?
The size of the space and the size of the speaker. So what Dolby's measuring is like woofer to woofer.
Mm-hmm.
How much width do you have between you? So the way the room is going to be set up, this is going to be the front of the room. So I'll have my speakers here in the front, my normal left-right that I would have in any mix setup, plus my left-right center, sub, overheads, and then my sides will be like right here next to me. And depending, I can either have them directly, like 90 degrees to my left and right, or I can actually push them back a little ways and kind of get a little more room out of it. Dolby wants to see at least 9 feet between those woofers. Dolby has certain specs that they want you to hit based on your speaker choice as far as like how far the woofers are from each other. It's like the physical cone of the speaker, how far those are apart. And there's a little bit of wiggle room, like if you want to be certified. I mean, not that you have to be certified by any stretch of the imagination. You can do this, and there are people doing this who are not certified to a very high level. So it's just kind of what works for you. And this being a commercial space, I would like to get it certified. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for, but it's really not making me make any different decisions than I would anyway. The main part of those decisions being like the maximum amount of isolation, room to room. So like, if you look past all the garbage, that wall right there starts the partition into the control room, my normal control room. So and all these walls back here share the opposite wall with the live room. So there's a potential for leakage. Now, I want to mitigate that as much as possible if I want both of these rooms to be able to work at the same time. I didn't really think that was possible, but talking to Haverstick Designs, it is totally possible. And we ran multiple simulations, which if you go to their website, Haverstick, I believe it's haverstickdesign.com. Double check me on that. But they have different simulations you can walk through with like different wall structures, and you can figure out generally how loud that's going to be translating. So you can set the volume of something. Here, I can just show you actually. So if we go to Haverstick, acoustic tools, haverstickdesigns.com, sound isolation simulator. So the way you do this is you set your speaker to be like the loudest you would ever prefer it to be. And he said get it as loud as a band in your room. So that's uncomfortably loud. Would you say so? That's
pretty loud.
That's pretty dang loud. I don't like that. So then you can go through and listen to different wall partition designs and how loud that's going to translate. So if that band were in that room with this wall between you, this is what it'll sound like. So this is the design I'm going with, the 64 with clips, like a furring channel, and then 2 layers of drywall on either side. Pretty darn quiet.
Pretty quiet.
And just as a reminder, it hurts. It's so loud. Now the beauty of this is like a 64 STC, which just basically a figure of how isolating is what's happening. With my stuff, I have aluminum studs, so that kind of hurts me a little bit. So I got a 63. It's a little less than this. But I have a 36-inch hallway between this with another partition with double drywall and sound insulation in the walls. So what I'm actually going to get is somewhere around 100 STC between these 2 rooms.
That's pretty great.
Which is incredible. So it's pretty bonkers, the amount of isolation that's possible if I do it correctly. So it's easy to overthink. And the main thing, like, where I was like, I would love to be able to mix in there and have somebody else be mixing in this room at the same time, which now I know is completely possible and we won't bother each other. Now it's to the point where, like, could I track a band and have somebody mix in there? And even that is possible because there's one other thing we're doing with the back wall here. And this is the other part about talking to like an actual person who does like an acoustician. Is that how you say it? I don't know.
Sounds right to me.
I don't know what the right term is. I apologize to everyone who knows. But so my wall was essentially 23 feet long. One of the things he helped me figure out was, like, to get this to the best possible starting point, there's things called room modes, like what's the frequency response of the room itself given certain dimensions, and certain dimensions won't change. My height won't change. My width won't change. My depth could totally change. I could put up another wall. So that actually kind of benefits me too, because on the other side of this, that's where all my bands are playing. So if I have a wall, an air gap, and another wall that I construct, well, now all of this is way more isolated than it was before. So we figured out what the best possible room mode was. It was basically moving this forward about 15 inches. So I'm going to have like when you figure in studs and everything, about a 12-inch air gap on this back wall, which is going to be huge. And then starts this room. So it looks pretty good as far as isolation goes, which is fantastic. The biggest parts are like sealing everything as well as we possibly can up to the ceiling. And in this building, nothing is load bearing, which is nice to build within. The ceilings are incredibly thick, 2 layers of 5/8, a ton of insulation up there, so it's already pretty isolated in the ceiling itself. But figuring out those little things, talking to somebody who knows what they're doing, even if you're going to DIY the rest of it, is immensely helpful. Just the tools that they give and the analytical part of it is super handy, just to know you're not going to make a super expensive mistake, because go out and buy a bunch of Safe and Sound. It's not super cheap. It's cheap, but it's not super cheap.
Getting an entire room is not cheap.
Yeah. I mean, this is about like $600.
Yeah.
Right here. And that's not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but
there's also the time investment. Like, you don't want to have to make a mistake with the kind of time investment that construction takes.
Yeah.
Just to have to undo it, which takes more time, and then redo it.
Exactly. And like if I need to make a change, make it now while this is a construction zone, and not when I'm sitting down doing a mix going, oh shit, I messed up. Like, I need to change something now. That's not the time to do it. So
what was the why did you decide to have a separate HVAC?
That came from them. That was something I wouldn't have really thought about. But I mean, it's basically it's an open cavity connecting every portion of the building. So I had 2 HVAC drops in here because these were 2 separate rooms. So if we're playing music anywhere, sound's going to take the shortest, easiest way to get to us, which is through the HVAC.
I never would have thought of that.
I wouldn't have either. I mean, and it seems super obvious.
Yeah. Now that you say it, I'm like, duh, of course.
Right. It's crazy obvious, but I never would have thought about it. So they were trying to talk through all these complicated, like, well, how can we make the HVAC work? And I was like, what if I just get a split? Can I just cut it off? Is that an option? And like, that'd make things so much easier. So like the cost of trying to get an HVAC to play well with 2 rooms versus just putting a split in and installing it myself it's almost cheaper to do the split.
Yeah.
I mean, the most expensive part of this was just buying the wire to install it, which is not crazy cheap right now.
So far, other than Gavin helping out, has everything else been you DIY? You did the electricity and all the demo, everything else.
Yeah. Me and my dad, and I had the help of one other guy, Jeff Reed. You're the GOAT. You know who you are. So the help of like those people got me to this point, and now it's going to be kind of me, and I think a few friends are probably going to help out. But up to this point, this is getting the shell the right way, doing the things I knew to do. Like I had to get rid of this door that was up here to the lounge. So we have one entry point, which helps for isolation. So finishing out the shell, covering all the holes that were here that went up to the ceiling, because all this was drop ceiling. So finishing the drywall all the way up to the ceiling, running separate circuits for everything just to make sure I have clean power. And then now, after all that's finished, having Gavin go back and help me figure out, like, okay, what do these walls look like? And what that looks like on the studs that we have, we're going to come out with a clip, an Isomax clip, which is basically just, it screws into the stud, and it has a channel of rubber that a furring strip can run along, and then that's what your drywall gets attached to. So basically you have a completely decoupled wall system with 2 layers of drywall on this side. So all this is going to be sound insulation, the clip, 1 layer of drywall, then mass loaded vinyl, which is just more mass. The whole thing is like, how much mass can we put on the wall to block sound? And then another layer of drywall. So
that's cool.
It's a lot of material, but it's not necessarily difficult. It's just kind of being slow and methodical about what you're trying to accomplish, and like even getting the electrical to a point where make sure those holes are, tight as possible, because we don't want leakage in certain spots.
Is it too late to abandon the project and turn it into an anechoic chamber instead?
No. You can totally do that.
What's the situation with the windows? Do they get to stay? Do they get covered up?
This was a point of contention with them. I didn't really want to bend here. I want windows. It's rare in a studio you get windows. And a lot of people will say just board them up or just completely get rid of them. I'm probably going to do like traps on a barn door system so I can roll it in place when I really need it. I don't really care.
You just want to be able to see the light sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that does so much for your like well-being in a space.
Yeah.
And when you don't need something surgical, it really doesn't matter because I'm used to sitting in my control room where I have a glass door to my left all day, every day. Like, so you can get used to just about anything. Is it perfect? No. That's why I will put traps on rollers to block that leakage. If somebody comes in and wants the space and is not used to that, then we can mitigate that. So, but I want to have the natural light wherever possible.
Is the door, you're going to do a single door? Or are you turning it into a dual door?
It'll probably still be a single door, but there'll be other things done to this frame to isolate it. And I don't know all of those details yet. That's something that talking to somebody who knows more about it than I do. There's going to be a fair bit of like sealing this door and just getting it airtight because that's most of the issue. Because this is thankfully a solid core door and these frames are just freaking built out. So it's just making sure they're as sealed as possible. And there's going to be some amount of leakage, but at this point, what I'm showing back here doesn't really leak anywhere of issue, if that makes sense. I have a lot of leeway because I have this hallway.
Yeah.
That's helping me out a whole lot.
Such a little happy accident.
Yeah. One of the things I was nervous about when I was putting this in was, is this going to be wide enough or do I have to go into the hallway? Because that would make the job a whole lot harder.
Drive home from Nashville was a lot of that
in
the conversation. What's funny to me, though, is the layout is all almost one for one like Warren's room.
Pretty close.
Like where you have his door was maybe like an extra foot that way.
Maybe. There's the width is definitely shorter by about a foot and a half, I think. So it's going to feel a little more cramped, but I really liked his space.
It was so nice.
It was cozy. I loved it.
I wish you had the little skylights like he had on the front.
Well, that's why I don't want to lose these. Right. I don't want to lose the windows. Because the natural light is... Otherwise, it would feel really dank in here, and I don't like that. In a bad way.
Yeah, dank can be great.
Dank can be great. Not here.
That's the motto of the day. Dank can be great.
Title of the video.
I've got one more question for you.
Okay, yeah.
And this might push us past construction time now, but you, for years now, have been standing. Are you going to commit to that in here? Are you going to have a sit desk? Because everything is so like proportional and measured out, do you have the ability to do sit stand, or does it have to be one or the other?
I mean, it is pretty focused on one point as far as like your optimal listening position. Is there work that can be done in another position? Sure. Like the same can be said about my current space that I have, the left right. Like there's definitely a sweet spot with those monitors. Am I always in it? Nope. Because there's work I know I can do where I don't absolutely have to be in the sweet spot.
Right.
And I would rather have the freedom of movement to be able to stand, to be able to sit.
You don't have to be in a sweet spot to top and tail.
There's a lot of work you don't have to be in the sweet spot for. I might find this is different than what I want to do is just actually probably build another desk for that room, something wider that I can get my walking treadmill under and move that over here.
Okay.
Because there's going to be an equipment rack right here that'll house the computer, the interface, all that fun stuff. All the cables will be localized here. And then I can just move around wherever I want. But I know where that sweet spot is, so I always get back to it. It makes the room a little more flexible if I want to turn around and talk to somebody, or if, hey, let's all gather around this one spot and listen. You know, like things that aren't necessarily perfect for the room, but I like as far as my workflow in that room that I find other people really like, because even some people said it's like more approachable and they can feel like they can be a part of the process if they can just come up right next to me, or I'll just physically scoot the desk out of the way. Now you stand in the sweet spot. So different ways to think about it. And down the road, I might change my mind and put a physical desk in one spot and not move. But right now, I think I want to be able to stand if I want to. So there's so many calculations again, and all this is like, how much to standard into spec do you want to do this? But there's so much math involved with like tuning and timing to a specific location. So if I stand, kind of negates some of that. How important is that? I don't know. When you're making the final decisions, I'll probably sit in the sweet spot. But I imagine for most of my work, I'll probably do it standing. And just once I get to know the room, especially, they probably won't matter just like over there. Like, you do the important decision making when you're in the sweet spot. Other than that, be comfortable. Whatever keeps you in a flow state as much as possible.
Normally, lying face down on the ground keeps me in my flow state. So
that's what iPads are for.
I didn't do the mental math with the speakers. Are you going no center channel?
There will be a center channel.
There will be a center channel.
So there's 11 Alpha 65s. So that's 7 surround, 4 up top. And then there's a sub coming as well. So 7.1.4. Thought about going 9. I kind of want to do this to a high level, but as approachable and DIY as possible.
Yeah.
So the things I'm picking for this are highly affordable units as far as something like this goes, but they're not cheap bottom of the barrel picks. The speakers,
RK.
No slouching speakers, but we're going with Focals. But those are like, you can get those on sale. They were just on sale. There was a bunch of them being sold for like $249 a pop. If you were to buy a whole lot of those, that's a fraction of the cost of my monitoring section in my other room. Yeah. So the sub on there, I went big on the sub because I just want one as I hold up 2 fingers. We went with a sub 12. I run the sub 6 in the other room, which is the smaller Focal sub. I went with the bigger one in here just to have the extra headroom and to get closer to spec. I think it'll work better here, having that larger one. The interface is going to be the Audient Aurea. And
I'm excited to check that out.
I'm really excited to check that out because you can do like the Avid Matrix thing. You can do the Symphony thing, which now there's a new Symphony specifically for it. The Aurea seems like the easiest solution with the least amount of third-party things that have to get involved to get the job done. And it's pretty affordable. And if I want to track, I can. But I have like 16 ADA inputs if I want them. The main thing I have are enough outputs to run to all my speakers with timing and tuning. And the cool part about this, they're audio converters, which are fantastic as far as reference converters go. More dynamic range than the Matrix has. Use with that information what you will. But having tuning, timing, I can have the renderer workflow built in, multiple preset scenes for myself to kind of mitigate a lot of third-party stuff that you would have needed with some of these kind of like Band-Aid fixes on other boxes that are just like software overlays to make them work with Atmos, where these newer boxes are a lot more affordable and kind of get the job done for you a little easier. It seems like, now obviously I'm in a construction phase, that might change as we get further down the road, but on paper, things are pretty exciting and seem way more approachable than they did even, 6 months ago. Like, the game has changed if you want to get into it. Like, it seems awfully cheap.
Do you have Ethernet ran in here?
I do 3 lines.
Okay, I was looking around. I haven't seen any.
So we've got 3 lines here.
Because I was starting to think like, oh, I hope he's not planning on running off of Wi-Fi.
No, so there's going to be one dedicated to network, one that's going to be dedicated to Dante if I want to interface with the other room, one dedicated to hearbacks if I want to use this as like another tracking room.
That'd be so cool.
So, and if it's going to be that isolated, who knows? I might put my cabs in here, like, or if I need to roll a bass cab, like, it's going to be awfully isolated from the rest of the building. So, if there isn't somebody in here working, this is a really expensive ISO booth.
It could be a really cool room for like a few string players in here, something like that, or like an acapella room.
It'll be, I don't know, we'll figure it out. I'm sure
lots of
uses for it.
You could fit like a bench over here, a weight bench, maybe a squat rack right over there.
Well, this is where the computer's going. Squat rack's going to have to go right here.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to be able to look through the window doing my good mornings, you know?
Just talk to the geese while you're doing your RDLs.
I mean, I do quack every time. Every rep.
When I started the process looking at this a year ago, the budget is in a completely different place. Like the products that are available now have totally changed.
I don't know how much of it is that concept of you get a new car and all of a sudden everywhere you look, people are driving it. But ever since our Nashville trip, I feel like every week there's been multiple Dolby related releases in terms of either software or hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, I mean, I don't know if we're talking about it yet, but you just got an interface that we're going to do a video on at some point.
Yeah.
But we just looked at it today and it's Dolby compatible.
You could totally, well, you could make it work. I don't know if that box has tuning and timing.
Probably, yeah. I'm not saying it's optimal, but like it's in the...
It's possible.
Yeah.
Like you could hook it up. And that, like 2 years ago when this was coming out, like that was the boxes people were trying to get this to work with.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, not every box had tuning and timing. You had to do it external. But I mean, my gosh, when we're talking about the PreSonus HD, what is that called? Flash it on the screen. But it has technically enough outputs to do this. Now, tuning and timing are kind of out the window. But again, if all you wanted to do was hook it up and you're not worried about being certified and you just want to get in and mix, well, holy cow, there you go. And you get some like IK NTMs. You're in the game for like $3,000.
Yeah. With like just room to upgrade as time goes on.
You know what's wild? The MTMs are more expensive than the Focals. Maybe it's the iLouds I was thinking of. Yeah, you could do the iLouds and the PreSonus for less than $3,000.
That's wild.
And get in. Like, and that's the thing here. Like, are you trying to how pro are you trying to be with this? Like, are you in a commercial space? Do some of these details matter? I have to think about this.
Could you try again?
No, Siri. No, thank you.
This being a commercial space, I have to think about like multiple pieces here. But if I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff, this would be a much cheaper endeavor than it is now. And even then, it's not as expensive as one would think.
Yeah.
I even posted on my Patreon that I was doing this, and some of the comments were like, well, geez, you're not even going to get an interface for less than $35,000. And I don't know where that idea is coming from. I don't know what interface costs $35,000. But, I mean, the whole room, if I go hard, is going to be less than $15K. And that's me doing the work. So I understand there's a difference there, but that's the whole DIY mindset, right? Like if we're talking apples to apples and we want to be as cheap as possible, that has to enter the conversation. If I was having somebody else do this construction, that'd be a whole different discussion.
I could see that being construction alone for that price if somebody else is doing it. But I mean, I kind of have the same feeling that I have about anybody trying to get into music in general. Like, what can you afford to start learning? And if we're talking about a stereo setup, if you can afford those $99 PreSonus speakers and you have a laptop and you want to get Reaper to learn on, well, there you go.
Yeah.
And you can always upgrade it, and you still have just a giant pool of knowledge to work on until you're ready to upgrade and take that to the next step for Dolby stuff. It's the same kind of deal.
And just like that. If you don't want to mix on monitors when you're doing it, nobody's forcing you to. You can do this on headphones. With Atmos, nobody's forcing you to do anything in Atmos. This is all like, do you want to? Do you have an interest in it? And if you don't, that's totally fine. That is absolutely fine. Like, what I can tell you is like, yeah, even with all these things built into place, this is a risk for anybody involved. It's a risk for me, but I want to do it and I want to learn it to a point where it kind of outweighs the risk for me. So like,
it's a risky boy.
Risky boy.
Frisky and risky. That's what we call Jeremy.
But I mean, and I know like 15K is nothing to sneeze at, but anything you're doing like at our pro level, I mean, we can probably think of multiple players that are traveling with more than 15K worth of gear to shows.
Yeah.
Like anything like that's worth doing in that aspect, like you're going to spend money on it naturally. It's just going to happen.
Yep.
So why would this be any different? I don't know. Like, and there's no right answer for everybody. And even what I'm doing here in this room is not going to work for everybody out there if this is something you're interested in. So the one thing you can do is just start playing with numbers. Like, do you have a space that this would work in? 2, like, go download Dolby's Dart, D-A-R-D-T. It runs in Excel, and you can just plug in numbers and see if it even works for you. And there's some wiggle room. Like, people want to hate on Dolby a lot. And even kind of Dolby hates on Dolby a little bit since I've been talking to them and like, okay, what are dimensions here? How's the curve work? And like, even they're like, yeah, whatever. So it's fuzzy territory, and it's not as like legalistic as you think it would be. Like,
there's no sheriff in town yet.
No. I mean, well, I guess technically they would be the sheriffs because they're the ones doing the certifications, but they're flexible on how things work. Like, there's no hard line. Nope, you're not going to make it. Because technically I wouldn't. Like, based on just spec, if you go by the Dart, I wouldn't make it. But they said I'm fine. Then going with 1 sub in this room, just on the Dart, I wouldn't make it. But I'm fine. So
they would expect 2 subs?
The software expects 2 subs.
Interesting.
Like, and all the software is doing is like giving you generalities. Like, here's what you should hope to hit. Here's the dimensions. Like, it kind of gives you a very general layout just when you're initially doing the research and trying to figure out if it would work.
Just to look there and see, like, what is the absolute bare minimum size of a room? Because you said that they wanted 9 or 9.5 feet between your side channels. Yeah. But what if you have much smaller diaphragms?
I don't know. I think that's woofer to woofer, but I could be wrong. But even still, you don't have to be certified.
Right.
So there's people doing this with much smaller rooms.
And bigger.
And much bigger. Although we have sat in multiple spaces.
Yeah.
Big rooms and small rooms. I've sat in some big rooms. I kind of like the cozy little vibes. So I kind of like that I'm right on the razor's edge of being too small. I liked that feeling when I was closer to things. And like everybody was inside of the speakers. Like, that's just whatever you like, man.
I'm so excited. It's cool.
Yeah. So there's going to be probably a lot of stuff on Recording Studio Loser as well as Phantom Power Hour. So,
and you said you're already doing more behind the scenes stuff on Patreon in terms of the build and
there's
stuff?
Like little updates and stuff that pop on there. Yeah.
Like Jeremy's Patreon for more of that and get cool samples and stuff while you're at it.
Heck yeah.
Well, you want to head back to the desk and do some recs?
Now it's time for record recs.
Hope you guys had a good little walkabout.
I'm interested to see what the comments look like on this one.
I think our audience is mostly Pretty nerdy and supportive.
Nerd portive.
So nerdive.
He's a nerd.
Jeremy, what have you been listening to?
Oh man, I had one.
Do you want me to start this time?
Oh, I got it. Mine's Two Car Garage.
That sounds familiar.
Warren showed it to us.
That's right. Yeah.
I've been obsessed with these guys.
Yeah, that is cool stuff. Their music videos are fun too.
The music video is really creative. The song is basically one note. The rhythm never changes, but it's just a cool vibe.
The production on it's pretty cool too.
It is. What's weird, like if the nerds among you are into like old Christian music, why? But Stephen Curtis Chapman, these are his kids. So interesting. It's a vibe though.
It is a vibe. That music video is so cool. It's like minimalist, but also like really creative.
Yeah.
Just like the song, really.
They're writing that line between like, let's do the least possible, but all the right decisions.
That's a good pick. And I'm glad you picked it because I remember vividly Warren showing us that song, but until now I'd forgotten all about it. My record rec this week is by Little Tybee. The song is More Like Jason.
Dude, my song was called Jason last week.
This one to me feels like Chon and Frank Zappa had a baby. And I think the Frank Zappa...
Kishibashi in there.
Little Kishibashi too. Especially like vocally. The chord changes though are what make me feel Frank Zappa. It's very like Peaches and Regalia to me. A lot of dynamic range throughout the song too.
That's cool.
It's a good jam.
Who is that?
Little Tybee.
Little Tybee.
Little, like the actual word, not little.
Little Tybee.
Little Tybee.
Save that.
Yeah.
That's wild because last week the song I recommended was called
Jason.
This is more like Jason.
That would have been funny if I picked this one last week. Well, that was a good time. And hopefully you all had a good time and are interested in this build out because we sure are. We're going to be talking about it more, whether you like it or not.
If you have questions, ask questions. Or if you just want to insult me, dude, go ahead and do that too.
Yeah, do you guys have experience with Dolby at all? I mean, maybe some of you might. If not, are you interested? Did you even know about it? I
feel like everybody knows about it.
Before I heard it, I knew it was a thing, but I never really looked into it at all.
I feel like even if you know about it, you have an opinion already formed.
It is for sure one of those things. Yeah. What's your opinion on it?
Oh, that's opening a door.
Well, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. We're still here, so we didn't get kidnapped. But
so far,
the thread is still there. So this morning when we got here, they had a little note with all the letters cut out from newspaper clippings. And they were at least kind enough to leave a clipping of Calvin and Hobbes on the note, but it for sure was a dangerous note. They're still planning on kidnapping us if we don't get more subscribers. So
help us out, please.
I love Calvin and Hobbes, but not when it's a threat.